everybody. I'm Dr. Roseann, and we're talking about dysregulated kids. But we're going to talk about dysregulation because, I'm on a mission to change the way we view and treat kids' mental health. But I really want you to understand the nervous system and brain and really kind of let go of your ideas about clinical diagnoses, right? So, for those of you that listen to my show on the regular, you know that for over 20 years, I did neuropsych testing. And as much as I think a diagnosis is important, when your kid needs support at school, an IEP, a 504, sometimes when we get a diagnosis, we really don't understand the way to support our child in a way that they can thrive, right? So, and most diagnoses, at least 50% of the time people come to me, are actually wrong. Yeah, I know that's always so shocking. And I have the luxury of a brain map that can tell us exactly what's going on in the brain, but it's more than that, right? So when we start really understanding dysregulation, why it happens, and what we can do about it, we can move our kids to a path of, being better focused, being able to listen better, and, of course, feeling much better about themselves. And that leads to when you have self confidence and self esteem, there are no limits to what a kid can do. So if you have a straight A student who doesn't have self-confidence, feels good about themselves, self-love, guess what? They're limited in their success. I know that's like hard to swallow, but that's what happens. So let's talk about dysregulation, what it looks like and what are signs that you need to be aware of and what kind of action. And we talk about nervous system dysregulation, right? We can take all those clinical issues and we can reframe how we think about it. So we are talking about our brain being understimulated or overstimulated. And when it's understimulated, we have internalizer behaviors. And when it's overstimulated, we have externalizer behaviors. So let's start on that understimulated side, because that is more of what we see, even though our externalizers and our, overstimulated kids get a lot more attention. So internalizers, right, they have problems with listening and focus. They're sluggish processors. They might have anxiety. They might be sensory seekers in a different way, in a more quiet way, right? They might want to, get out and spin. And there's a whole other list of things. You tend to see more clinical diagnosis like ADD and attentive. You might even see autism there, depending on what their profile is. You might see learning disabilities there, anxiety, different forms. And then on that externalizer, overstimulated side, you're going to see things like big emotional reactions, sensory defensiveness, um, anger, irritation, all of that. And you might see clinical diagnosis like autism, ADHD, hyperactivity, PANS-PANDAS, reactive attachment disorder. And those are reflections of what is actually happening in the nervous system. And you can see symptoms, behaviors, whatever you want to call them, of both. But when we reframe how we think about the nervous system, we don't always look for, what's the medication for ADHD? How do I fix this, problem with PANS? We start realizing, wow, my nervous system is overstimulated, it's understimulated. What can I do to regulate it? And again, clinical diagnoses are not unimportant. They can get you services, and also they can help you have a better understanding of your child and probably yourself, right? As a mom of two neurodivergents. And as I like to tell everybody, I mean, technically I'm a neurodivergent. I have a math disability, which isn't super common, but boy, did it get in the way of my self-esteem when I was growing up. And how about functioning in math? So often these things run in families, and it can be harder to get through the muck, right? But when we reframe that nervous system dysregulation, we can say, again, what's the path, right? So my kid is sluggish in processing. What skills can I give them? Because pills don't equate to skills, but we must get that nervous system working in a way and processing in a different way. So when we are looking at the brain, which I often do in our one-to-one program, we get to see the learning hubs of the brain, the connections to the brain. Now, again, this is an awesome thing to be able to do. Not everybody can, fly in and see me, but you can use the behavioral clues as an indicator that my child needs more support. And, when you're doing this, the first step you're going to do as a parent, because you know what I'm going to tell you? You got to put your oxygen mask on. We're going to make sure that we're regulated. Of course, we're always going to have an emotionality when we're looking at this with our kids, but we don't want to be so emotional that we don't have clarity, right? We want to make sure that we're taking a 360 aerial view. We're looking at what are some of the triggers that you have? What are some of the triggers your child has for their behavior? And then you can start really understanding and dissecting, and you can really be a parent detective, put that detective hat on, and really start making a list. Wow, my kid always has stomach aches. Only on school days. They're really struggling with sleep. They have anxious avoidance. They're reactive in transitions, right? Most of the time when I'm working with people, it's honestly, everybody comes to me because I am a badass strategist, and I really help walk parents through this. But what we need to do is identify these micro behaviors so that we can get to the nexus of really what's destabilizing, what's impacting the nervous system. And it starts with you. It starts with you regulating and then analyzing it and then taking action on it, right? So I got some questions in advance from our Facebook community, and I'm going to share some of these questions that they had about having a dysregulated kid. So, somebody asked me a very timely question because I'm going to share the story. It's, what else can I do besides medication to help regulate my child's nervous system? So most of you are finding me because you're either already holistic and you want to lean into that because you know it works, right? And but majority of you are here because all the other things you were doing aren't working. And some of you feel like medication is working. And I was at a party this weekend, and it was great because it's very timely for today. And it was a graduation party, and everybody there sent their kids to this amazing school for neurodivergence. It's a schmancy school. And the kids are doing great after, I mean, we're all moms of neurodivergence pretty much on this right here. Your kid gets hit after hit after hit. Most kids don't get identified in a timely manner, and nor do they ever get the proper intervention until you decide you're going to be the CEO and take control. And so what does that mean? That your kid actually doesn't love themselves and feels stupid and has a hard time. And so everybody wanted to talk to me about their teenage and adult children, about what else could they do besides medication. And I had this great talk with this dad, and actually had separate talks with a mom and a dad. And the mom was like in the worry mode, but there, and got it, and like knew that she had to be on the other side of this. And she's an educator. She's a very detailed kind of brain. So she gets caught in the weeds. But the dad was like, man, this kid's got to learn coping skills. And I was like, amen. Praise the Lord, right? Need coping skills. And he was like, Roseann, how can I get her off of this meds and learn how to tolerate stress? And I was like, your wife's listening to the show. You're not listening to the show. So the number one thing we need, right, for lifelong mental health is stress tolerance. And that starts with your toolkit, the coping skills, right? I talk a lot about this in our dysregulation solution program, but it's about shifting what you're doing, working smarter, not harder. And it means that one, you're working on your own self regulation so that you can model when you're successful and when you're not, and then you can show them what you do, but you're going to help your kids create a window of tolerance. Now, what this dad was sharing with me was that, his daughter doesn't know how to manage stress. He's like, she's less stressed because she's on the meds. She hasn't gained one skill, Roseann. And he was like, her life isn't going the way she wants, and she's in her 20s. And great parents is not about you being a bad parent. It's about meeting your kid where they're at, understanding that dysregulation, but also your child understanding dysregulation. And it doesn't matter if your kid is 3, 10, 17, or 25. They can understand it in a way where they can be empowered by it. So that's where it starts. Understanding, developing those skills is very, very, very critical. But one of the questions is, does diet have any impact on a child's ability to self-regulate? Can I say, heck yeah? Of course, right? So there are many ways to self-regulation in supporting the nervous system, right? There are actually behavioral techniques, which, 3 decades of supporting people as a licensed mental health professional. I'm not some random health coach who's a mom who's like, hey, I got the certificate online and now I'm going to tell you what to do. These are tried and tested things, right? And they're all evidence-based. So diet often feels like this huge hurdle, right? And, when we're over in our dysregulation solution, we're talking about all of these obstacles to it. And sometimes diet should be the first thing, and sometimes it should be in the middle. It really depends. Does your kid have sensory issues and ARFID and, OCD around food? It's not this is the first thing. Does it have an impact? Absolutely. Is it often immediate impact? Yes. Yes. With consistency. So if you're just randomly, oh, I'm going to take out wheat, but on the 3rd day we're having it. Oh, on the 7th day we're having it. Your body is going to go into an inflammatory state. And I'm only saying wheat because, American wheat has poison on it, has glyphosate. So it's an easy thing to remove. And most kids, because I do genetic testing in our program, that most people, even if they're not reactive to wheat, they are showing sensitivities to poison. I mean, aren't we all sensitive to poison? But some of my people don't show any sensitivities or allergies to wheat, but they are incredibly sensitive to poison. And that's why they struggle so much with the wheat. So there's lots of other tips and things that people can do to support that. So one of the questions I have is, I've tried a lot of therapies. Why don't they work? This is constant. Everybody calls here. They want to work with me one-on-one, which you can. You go to drroseann.com/help. Nobody's getting on the phone with you unless you take our solution matcher. We just get too many calls. And also know that we are going to accept you based on, of course, if I can help you. But we take complex cases. We don't take mean people. So if you identify as demanding or nasty or rude, don't even bother applying, because you're not going to get to me. Very serious about that. So again, complex problems, I'm ready for it. Attitude, come on. But everybody wants to talk to me about this, and they want to guarantee that, oh, this is the thing that's going to work. One, nobody should guarantee you anything, but I guarantee you, when you do these things, regardless of whether you're listening or now, you're going to have an improvement. The degree of improvement is unique to each person, but there's no magic wand, people. You are the magic wand. That's why it's here. And why do therapies not work? I'm talking great therapies. You got a great talk therapist. You have a great physician who's, treating your kid with PANS. You're have an ERP therapist for OCD. You're doing social skills. Why is it not working? It's a dysregulated nervous system. So when your nervous system is activated, or it's understimulated, there's nothing to stick to, right? The way the brain works, once you're activated, if you're moving towards fight, flight, or freeze, now fawn, right? If your nervous system is too activated, it will physiologically not allow you to learn in the same way, pay attention in the same way, take action in the same way. It's not going to allow you. So it's too activated for good learning to stick, right? And, in the extreme of that, it's talking to a child who's in the red, right? Your kid's in a sensory overload. I remember Max would flip out over his socks. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, my sensory parents, where the tears, the extreme, like so reactive. I'm not going to be like, yeah, we're going to the social skills therapist. You're going to learn social skills. His brain's not going to let him. But we don't understand all those micro activations as well as when our brain and body isn't stimulated. You're probably like, oh, well, they have ADD. That may or may not be the case. So it's about regulating the nervous system. Once you regulate, the stickiness of the learning is incomparable. And that's what so many people tell us when they work with us. So somebody's asking questions about IVIG and pandas, and this is about dysregulation. Somebody's asking about if it will interfere with his IVIG. That's a really specific question that I really can't answer because I don't know what the answer is for you and your clinical case, and that's somebody who works with us one-on-one. But what I can tell you is you're trying all these therapies and things aren't working, right? Stress activated nervous system is absolutely the biggest hurdle that I see people really failing to overcome for any treatments to work, including medical. The second one is probably improper detoxification. So you need to get your detoxification systems working properly in order for healing to occur particularly in pans and pandas. And many of our kids have genetic mutations which interfere with it. But don't ignore a stress activated nervous system. Now, people will say to me, well, my kid's in an extreme flare, or they have, high levels OCD, or they're, punching holes and they have, ADHD and, rejection sensitive dysphoria. How can I get those other things to work? Well, there are many ways to regulate the nervous systems. And you can always go to our Facebook group, drroseann.com/group. But I hope this was a helpful conversation. I'm really, really want you to understand dysregulation. Share this with your partner. Share this with your mother-in-law. Share this for your friend, Jennifer, whose kid is off the wall, or you got another friend, Amy, whose kid can't pay attention for more than 3 seconds. We need to get this information out there. And I just want you to know, as always, it's going to be okay when you take one step. You do one thing consistently, stay strong, put your oxygen mask on, and remember, you got this.